Great, let's get started. So, welcome to this session of On the Shoulders of Giants. This series is all about modeling success. We bring business owners like Jason who've been on the Apex journey and created real transformation. It might be more revenue, more freedom, more confidence, control. Whatever it is that they've gained, here's what we know. The truth is, success leaves clues. What we're asking you to do here is just listen to Jason, what he did, because there's some clues there. Every recruiter you hear in these series starts out facing the same challenges that you probably have right now: inconsistent finances, famine and feast in terms of revenue, having trouble getting clients, unpredictable fees, wanting high fees, lack of confidence, maybe even too many late nights. But these guys have made the shift. So as you listen, don't just hear their stories. Please make notes. Look for the mindset shifts, because most of the success comes from the mindset shift. Look for the decisions, the systems that got them there. So let's dive in. And by the way, feel free to ask any questions. This is an open session. You've got any questions that you want to ask Jason, please feel free. So let me hand over to Jason. Jason, once again, thanks for agreeing to be our guest today on the Shoulders of Giants. Before we get into it, just tell us a bit about you and your business and what you do, please, Jason.
Thanks, Terry, and hi, everybody. So we are a relatively small business. There's 16 of us, operate across 3 provinces in South Africa. Areas of specialization is finance, IT, HR, and legal. And from a geographical footprint, place candidates extensively through, obviously, South Africa, a lot of Africa, Middle East, and then certain areas in Europe, Australia, and Papua New Guinea.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jason. So just tell us a bit about your life and your business. What did it look like pre-Apex?
Chaos would be a good description. I mean, look, we've been going for 8.5 years. Prior to this, I had started another business which I ran for 15 years and sold that. During that period, I bought another recruitment business that looks after interim management from Ernst & Young, co-ran that, and then ended up selling that business as well. And in our 8 years that we've been around, so 8.5 years now, each year we've been extremely fortunate where we've grown year-on-year revenue. We had a slight dip in COVID, but I mean, it was an insignificant dip. I think if I look at it from the global figures, we dropped under probably 18 or 19% that year in revenue. But, pre-Apex, we were working, and in particular, we were working hard, that we were driving activity, we were pushing the numbers. Recruitment's about numbers, we all know that. But for us, the more technology was evolving and AI was coming along and various other applications, as much as that saved us time, I never had any spare time. It was just never enough. We were doing more and more. And you sort of led to believe that you're becoming more and more efficient because you've got all these wonderful technology and all these wonderful apps. But the reality is I was running at burnout and pretty much had started, and I mean, I had said this to several of my staff, I started losing the interest and the love for recruitment, which is sad because it is something that I really do enjoy.
So what was it that made you then say, right, I need to do something, enough is enough, and join Apex? What? Because often there's something that's happened that you go, enough already. What was it for you, Jason?
So the very beginning part, I mean, I'd never heard of Terry or of Make More Placements. It was the emails that you had sent through that resonated with me. They were catchy, they were quite humorous, but more importantly, I read it, and every single one, it is exactly how I was feeling, being ghosted, working harder. So it really started at that. And then the first call that I had with you, and you sort of asked me several questions around the business. I mean, you were very knowledgeable. I thought, I haven't got anything to lose. Let me do it. I'll pass half an hour while we have our initial meeting. And I left pleasantly surprised after that meeting. It definitely sort of asked some tough questions that I wasn't able to answer, and it made me look at things in a different light.
And I know we talked since then. You said that you touched on it just now that you'd kind of lost a bit of your mojo. When you say you lost your mojo, but you've got it back now, what does that actually mean for you, Jason?
So it's, I think from a business leader perspective, you need to come in every single day, put the smile on, spring in your step, and you need to lead from the front from a team perspective. And it's difficult when internally you have your own personal struggles where you don't feel it and you're just exhausted and you're going, you're frustrated, and I've got losses, they've got losses. In addition to that, you've got the stress of running the business. So I think it was, and weirdly enough, no matter how many placements I made, no matter what the revenue was, I just started not feeling satisfied anymore around what I was doing. And I think that's when I sort of say I lost my mojo. I wasn't getting satisfied anymore in what in making and placing candidates, irrespective of the level and how exciting it was. The feeling of being successful went away very, very quickly, where in the old days it used to sit with me. I mean, didn't want to travel extensively anymore back up to Johannesburg, because I live in Cape Town, to see clients. I didn't want to do client meetings. I was able to do a lot of it very successfully from here, but I sort of made myself believe that it was that, but the reality it was just the mojo and the desire that had started sort of bleeding away. So I think, getting that mojo back for me, it's a fresh approach. I'm loving what I'm doing again. I mean, even my wife's noticed a change. She said, my tone in the last 4 months since we've been on this journey with you has been from very negative and constant. Recruitment's frustrating. It's this AI is coming along. What does this mean? Clients are doing it themselves. All the stuff that a lot of the people on the community often have discussions around, and that has changed significantly now. Where it's I don't have those limiting beliefs, and I think for me, that really is the turning point. Is a conversation that we had, and you said, it's my limiting beliefs that's holding me back. It isn't, and when I changed that, a completely different perspective.
Amazing. By the way, if anybody here got any questions, just raise your hand or put yes in the box, and I'll come to you if you've got any questions for Jason. I'm just curious, though. You talk about, I'm not going to hang on to this, but just your mojo. What impact do you think it was having on the business, on your colleagues, when you felt that drive and that enjoyment that was there before was no longer there? What impact do you think that would have had on your colleagues in the business?
So, again, I'm human, just like everybody else, and I don't have all the answers. So having the one-on-one meetings that we have and doing the motivational talks, I think it was sort of almost what I would use is that balloon effect, where you blow up a balloon and it's full, and as soon as you sort of let it go, the air goes out of it and it's deflated. And I think motivating the staff, trying to pick them up after losses, etc., it became harder and harder because I was having to dig deeper and deeper, but there was a certain degree of lack of self-belief in the industry and what I was doing myself. So I think it definitely did impact me from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, I get that. And you talked about limited beliefs, which, as a group, we've talked about this a lot, about limited beliefs and how that impacts on your behavior and the actions that you take. What were the limited beliefs that at the time were holding you back, that in hindsight, you look back on them and you think that's nonsense, that it was just my limited beliefs? Can you give some examples of some of those?
The easy ones will be, lower fees, being happy with the fees that you're charging, a large degree of feeling very, a client gives you a job spec and you feel grateful for getting a job spec from a client or a new client, and they give you a piece of work, but to get you off the phone, and they're not really committed to it. So definitely that. The limiting belief, I think the one element was the true value in what we do. There's a lot of, at times, as much as I've been doing this for over 20 years and have sold a few recruitment businesses, that imposter syndrome sneaks in where you get you're phoning a CEO or a CFO or a CPO and you're having this conversation and you're saying, well, am I really as good as I think I am? Or, am I just putting it on? And that limiting belief it's because to a certain degree it does come naturally, but they make you feel like you're begging for work, which isn't the case. I'd made myself sort of feel like that.
100%, yeah.
And I think just that limiting belief in the sense around, there's a sense of security in numbers. So the more volume you've got of job specs, the more clients you're working, the busier you are. You sort of, that state of, I'm so busy and I'm in panic stage, but you get home and you're going, I don't know what I did today. I didn't feel like I achieved anything. That for me has definitely gone away.
Yeah. Just very quickly, everybody else, just type yes in the box if you've had that imposter syndrome when you're reaching out to a decision maker, but in the back of your mind, there's part of you going, who am I to be calling this senior decision maker? Just let know in the box. Yeah, and look, if even if you don't give a response, then take a look. Everybody goes through this. I would go so far to say something like 95% of recruiters actually go through this. I'm going to get Don's. You just shared something there quite interesting. Just open it, Matt, and just share what you put in there, Don, and tell us more.
Yeah, I appreciate first and foremost Jason's story. I think we all probably have that from time to time. I don't have it as much as I used to be fair.
Just very quickly, Don, just to interrupt, how long have you been recruiting? Just to get some
about 25
context.
years.
25 years.
Yeah.
You don't have it as much. Just listen to that. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you, Don. Carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, part of that is that I know my market really, really, really well. Better than most people, oftentimes, that I find I talk to, but at least for what I do, not necessarily the science behind it. I think, though, I still get it at times where there's I just put in quotes a big fish. Say, for instance, you were to have a conversation with the CEO of Coca-Cola in a half hour. That might still rattle me a little bit, to be fair. Right? Fortune 500 company, something like that. It shouldn't, to be fair. And again, I think a lot of that confidence comes from the preparation of both your market knowledge and knowledge of, that person's. So I think confidence breeds success in that way, but I would still probably get a little rattled if I was going to be able to see on the phone with the CEO of Coke.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And there's a saying, isn't there? I may have said it before. If you've got an issue with confidence, courage comes just before confidence. So it's the courage you need to do, i.e. pick up that phone to the CEO of PepsiCo or whoever it was. But that requires courage. And it's the courage that you require to then pick up the phone to make that call, have the conversation, is where you then get your confidence. But yeah, really good point. And I think the other point that Jason mentioned there, so Jason's now having the conversation, and we've all done this, by the way. You're having the conversation, but it's called running a story in the background about what's really going on. This is what the decision maker's thinking. The decision maker isn't really interested in what I've got to say and all that stuff. And we often talk about this. We talked about this only on Monday about the conversation that's constantly running in the background. What you're saying to yourself. Nobody's told you that, and there's a saying. Nothing has any meaning. You just give stuff meaning. Look at the way that CEO looked at me through the screen. He or she's clearly not interested, but it's your stuff rather than the reality. And just being aware of that will really serve you well. I really appreciate you sharing that, Jason. Some real gems there. So you then joined Apex. In terms of Apex itself, the system, the community and structure, what specifically was really useful for you to bring that spark back for you, Jason?
So, look, the community is great. The Monday motivation, as an example, you often just join in with no expectation of anything specific, and somebody mentions something, and you take that away, and there's been many that I've sort of things I've taken away, and I've looked at and implemented it, whether it's audio books that I've listened to, whether it's applications that we've started using, etc. But it definitely is, from a support perspective, Apex has been exceptionally good, and it's I think that whole element of, we're not doing this alone. The challenges that we encountering in South Africa are being encountered in the US, in Canada, etc. The stuff I'm telling you is exactly what Don's telling, or Paul's telling you, or I know you've linked me up with somebody in Australia, and we've sort of had connections, etc. So it's good to know that we're all going through it, but it's even better to know that the support within the Apex community has, and everybody has. I mean, there hasn't been an instance when I've reached out to somebody and they say, I'm too busy to get back to you.
Mm. Oh, thanks for sharing that as well, Jason. And anybody here, nobody here should be stuck. If you want any questions asked, by all means, ask us, the coaches. But if you want to reach out to anybody else, we actively encourage that. Yeah. Jason, and you'll correct me on the date, probably 4-6 weeks into the program, I remember talking to you, and you'd won 2 retainers really quickly. Just share with us the shift from you were 100% contingent, 99% contingent, to now asking for retainers and getting them. Just share us that journey, please, Jason.
It was actually 3.
3 weeks.
It was a Thursday, Thursday, Friday, Monday that I actually won them, and it was very simple. It's you would ask me why. You would ask me 2 questions: are we the most expensive? Are we within a client? Are we the most expensive? Are we the cheapest? Or in mid-range? And I said, well, we're in mid-range. And you said, well, why would you want to charge mid-range? And I was like, well, that's a pretty valid question. It's because we were desperate for work. And you then said, well, are you selling retainers? And I went, and I think like everybody else went, well, no, clients aren't buying them, and they've burnt their fingers, and they're not doing it. And you went, well, is that a fact, or is that my opinion? And it was my opinion, and it was an opinion because I'd asked a few clients, but over the years I just stopped asking for retainers. And you said, well, just ask for it. What's the worst they can do? They can say no, and then you can talk to them about exclusivity, or you can talk to them about contingency. Either way, but you just gauge it where they're at. And in that 4 to 6 weeks, I changed my mindset around the limiting beliefs, and I really became, well, if you want to use me, this is what the terms are going to be. So I went to those meetings Thursday, Friday, and Monday, and got the brief, and I said to the client, well, that's great. This is how it's going to work. This is what I charge you. And they came back and said, well, instantly in the meeting, we don't do retainers, and we don't this, and we've been burnt in the past. I'm like, that's fine. Just because you've had one bad experience doesn't mean that it's always going to be a bad experience. Does that mean that because you've had a bad meal at a restaurant, you're never going to eat out again? And I said, well, this is it. And I said, are you wanted or not? And they were umming and ahhing. I said, well, that's what my terms are. And they wanted to end the meeting saying, well, are you going to start the work? And I said, I'm not going to start the work. If we're not agreeing to the retainer, I'll send you a quick proposal around what it involves. And it wasn't an actual formal proposal. It was an email going, this is what it is. And all 3 came back, said absolutely they're happy to move ahead with the retainer. And one in particular was a extremely difficult client that we struggled with over the years, to the point we wanted to get rid of them. And then since then, it's just been clear sailing. I mean, not just myself, but everybody in the business, maybe with the exception of 1 or 2, has been selling retainers at a rapid rate, and have pushed our fees up significantly.
Excellent. Look, just a couple of things there, a couple of teachings there. When we talked earlier about the story, so we run a story. So you asked 5 clients for a retainer. 5 clients say no. You run a story. My clients don't pay retainers, but you behave then according to that story that you're running. So you stop asking. So because you stop asking, you're not going to get retainers. So you now have evidence to say, if I talk to you, you go, well, nobody pays retainer because I don't get them. As Jason said, I always ask, well, how many people did you ask? Very rare it's more than 10. Very, very rare it's more than 10. Most people, 4 or 5, I've asked. And when you ask them the question, they haven't thought about it. Well, actually, I've only asked 4 or 5. They said, I've asked a few. And I always ask, how many have you actually asked? Whatever answer they say, you say, That's 4 or 5 people that said no. That doesn't mean that the world itself isn't going to give you a retainer. Remember I said earlier, courage first, confidence. That's where you get the confidence. So Jason has the courage to ask, wins the retainers, now the confidence. I can ask everybody for a retainer. His map of the world, his story now is, well, people pay retainers. Because he had the courage to ask, to get the yes, to get the confidence, to actually win the retainers.
Terry, I think also just to add to that, the other sort of thing that you had said to me, which has stuck with me, is in contingency, because we were selling retainers, but not many over the years. It had got less and less. So we had become a contingency house, which is really not a great place to be. And looking at the numbers, for every 10 jobs we were receiving, we're placing 2, 3 of them, probably 3, let's say. 70% of the time we were working for free. But as much as you were only placing 3 out of 10, there came a sense of comfort going, oh, well, I've still got 10 jobs and I'm busy and now look at me. And I got away from that mindset and we sort of went into the cold turkey a bit, because then I'm going, I've only got 3 jobs now. But that I'm placing them because there's no other way. I mean, they're not working with anyone. It's exclusive. They're retained. So instead of taking the bad work and taking bad clients, we just said no. And if they wouldn't agree, we went, no problem. You're obviously not ready to recruit. And, if you are ready, this adds immense value. And it wasn't that, I think, strangely enough, and it's when we were selling them before, it was like, great, I'm selling it, and I was selling it to win the cash, and I wanted the fee. And now when I sell it, I'm like, this is the value to the client. Like, we pre-book in your diaries. I mentioned a colleague of mine. It doesn't make sense why clients don't do retainers. It is just nonsensical, because they are so successful and they get the commitment. So it has really turned our business model on its head.
Again, note Jason's language there. He's now getting the benefit to the client. Sometimes what stops you from getting the retainer, because you can't see the benefit to the client, so you can't convince the client. The more you appreciate the benefit to the client, the more likely you are to communicate that benefit to the client. So it's no longer about, I need the retainer because our cash flow is a bit tight, because they couldn't care less about that. I'm going to give you value. When we work on the retained basis, we're going to work exclusively. I'm not going to share these candidates with anybody else. I'm going to give you value. We're going to block out the time. We work exclusively with you. What that means to you, Mr. or Mrs. Hiring Manager. Some great examples there. And also, again, if you listen very carefully, the shift in Jason's language, when you get it, and the way you're now getting higher fees. And I think the other big takeaway from what Jason said there, you see, you'll take business, and to put it bluntly, you'll take shitty business if you've got what's called a scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset, I better take this, it's better than nothing at all. Abundance mindset is, why the hell would I do that? There's more business out there than I can handle. It's okay for me to say no to you, because there's more business out there. Because if you go into a call with a scarcity mindset, and we joke about this on these calls, it's called commission breath. The hiring manager smells that commission that you're desperate for, smells that desperation. And the moment they can smell that desperation, it's very unconscious as well, the more likely they're going to push you, because they get that if they push you, you're going to relent. Well, so you're saying things like, well, we normally charge 25%. They've heard normally, there's room for negotiation here. Or you give the fee and they look you straight in the eye and you've got that discomfort, you freeze and you give your fee. Scarcity mindset. When you've got abundance mindset, you say, this is what it is, it's 33%. What do we need to do to get started? And it's just a complete different shift. Talking to Kinjal earlier about this, and everybody here experiences this. We talk about, when we're talking to you, and we encourage you to say this to clients, as we're talking to you, I say to you, if you qualify to work with us and I carry on talking, just by saying that, I'm changing the dynamics of the call. The client's now thinking, if you qualify, and some clients will say, well, what do I need to do to qualify to work with you? Well, we'll cover that later, but let me just ask you a few more questions. See, you're saying, I'm not desperate for this business. You may not even qualify to work with us, but it changes the whole dynamics. I just want to stop at this point and just get a few people's thoughts and feedback. Paul, I'm going to come to you, Paul, and 2 or 3 or 4 other people as well. Just for your thoughts on that, please, Paul.
On the if you qualify a bit, or on what Jason?
Yeah, and the whole thing, what we've covered so far. Just to get your thoughts on everything that's been covered so far.
Yeah, it actually made me remember a time in my first job. I used to work in car rental, and we had to sell the insurance essentially to people. And for ages, if you couldn't sell it, the people who couldn't sell it would just go, "Oh, it's a lot of money to pay out, and people don't really want it, and I don't really see what the benefits are." But then, as soon as you actually got someone that bought it and could see the benefit of it and how much it was worth to them, paying 15 quid a day was nothing to them. And so, as soon as you got that in your head, you then go on a run where you actually started thinking, right, if I get this one, it's 9 in a row, rather than thinking I'll never be able to sell this again. And it's a simple thing with retainers. Like, you get the habit of selling stuff, and as soon as you're on a roll, it becomes so much more fun.
That's right. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Paul. Brian, love to get your thoughts, feedback on what we've covered so far.
I think that, oftentimes my mindset is, when there is a meeting set, it's kind of disqualifying myself in a way. I hate to put it like that, but geez, how many other recruiters am I against, and what are their fees they're offering? And I need to almost switch that to, hey, if I schedule the meeting, I've already won. I need to have them sign and just act like this is my business, and I'll be shocked if I don't get it. Not, geez, how
100%.
many competing against, So.
Yeah, that's a great share there, Ryan. Thank you. Thanks for that. Rich, love to get your thoughts. And then I'll come to you, Phil Williams.
Yeah, I went for a walk this morning and I was listening to a book recommended by you all, which was Brian Tracy's Maximum Achievement or whatever. And he was just saying, about setting yourself up for success by your self-talk. And I think, and mentally preparing for the meeting. So when you see yourself talking to the customer and you see yourself winning them and getting the signed agreement and moving forward and working with them, all that visualization. So that's what I was listening to today. So I think it's really apropos here.
Yeah, really, really great point there, Rich, and again, we encourage that when you're having the meeting, picture the meeting, picture you get to the end of the call, and whatever your close is, such as, what do we need to do to get started, Mr. Hiring Manager? And then picture the hiring manager, if you can just confirm this in writing. And ideally, you should have a template email, so it takes you seconds to get that email out to them. But picture the journey, asking for the business, and the hiring manager saying, yeah, that's great. Just confirm everything, do it in writing. Really good point there, Rich. Thank you. Hi, Philip.
So I don't want to add too much onto what Ryan, Rich, Jason has already covered, but the mindset change, the identity, and what you mentioned, Hal, about the contingency breath, I think relates so well to the journey that we've walked with Apex thus far. And since we've, sort of slowed down and said, right, take a look at what we're doing. Is this qualified? Is this valuable? If not, get it off your desk and focus on what you've got and make a success out of that. So, yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Back to you, Jason. One of the things that I've been aware of is your authority and your presence. It's clearly grown since you've been with us. Tell us about that, what you did to your presence, your credibility, authority, what you've done there. Was it content, consistency? Yeah, just tell us a bit about that, please.
So, no, thank you. I think consistency is key, not hot and cold. I think, all salespeople blow hot and cold, and you have a good month and you take your foot off the gas and it drops off, and then you panic, and it's just this ongoing cycle, which is exhausting. So the consistency for us has been a key thing, and then largely the self-belief around the value that we I can see the wood from the trees now. I've been doing this for over 20 years and have only worked for a search firm in the UK and Robert Walters in the UK and in South Africa for a bit. And the things we've done since working with you around creating that consistency, some of this, as an example, we never used to do on LinkedIn. I never used to do a newsletter. We now individually, I do one, but the staff do one, and I think I'm at 4,500 subscribers to that week. We've changed our product offering where we've redone our terms, and our terms talk consistently around retainers, etc. We've redone that. We never used to do polls on LinkedIn. We're doing polls now on LinkedIn. We did mass mailers, but on and off, but they were more irregular than not, and the content wasn't particularly great. So we started introducing mass mailers. But again, through the network, we've found platforms that makes us a lot easier for you. In addition to that, we've, again, through the platform, someone had mentioned something called LinkedIn Helper, which isn't part of LinkedIn. It's just on the side, which sends off 200 emails a day for me to my network. So I log on in the morning, and while I'm getting coffee, this thing just kicks in and it sends off 200 emails. So that.
Yeah. So just to clarify, Jason, email, you mean LinkedIn messages?
LinkedIn in messages, correct?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
To a targeted audience.
Yeah.
So it does that. And something I've never thought of doing, and something I was particularly nervous of, was doing podcasts. And I've now started doing podcasts. We've got a new partnership with we've gone into a new joint venture with somebody who's come on board, who's offering a new service around value to candidates around their LinkedIn profiles, podcasts. So we've done some with him. I did a podcast with a client who's writing a book, who wanted to interview me. So if I look at that, and if you had to go back and you look at my LinkedIn profile, and if you look at my staff's LinkedIn profile and the business's LinkedIn profile, you'll see a vast difference from 4 months ago to now. So, part of my sense of confidence and credibility is because when I'm talking to people are going, Jason, I see you active, and it's this. And the amount of people that have messaged me and staff have said, oh, we saw Jason's newsletter, we saw you guys are doing this. There's overall, it's not directed at me, but overall the business itself is in a very, very different space around credibility.
Excellent. That is fantastic. Kinjal's got a question. I take it's for Jason. You far away.
Yes. So I have actually a couple of questions to Jason, and one of it I will raise it now related to just what you mentioned, Jason, regarding your improving your LinkedIn presence. Yeah, you just mentioned that you've been sending out like 200 messages, but I think I've sent 200 since the beginning of this week, and I'm already blocked out on LinkedIn. So maybe I'll just connect with you offline to see, hey, what tools, technologies is certainly helping you, because I'm trying to get there. And
Kinjal, can I just clarify something there? I thought you said you'd sent 100 invites. Yeah, Jason sending messages, not invite requests. So there's a difference.
Okay, that's
just to clarify. Yeah.
Okay. So that's in mails is what Jason is talking about.
Your first degree connections, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is a way, again. So if you want to add people, we do via. So are you using LinkedIn Helper? So we can take it off, and I can show you how. But we've changed all our limitations on that.
Yeah. So sure, I'll text you offline. We can connect. And second thing, also referring to the one of the previous story that you mentioned around this retainers, winning the retainers. Yeah. Are these in the South African market? Is it something, one of the very doubt that most of the recruiters have is it normal in your market? Yeah. Will we really win that? Is it? So just trying to understand, what are the norms? How did you break through those norms? Just a little more insight into that story to get some more aspirations.
No, so strangely enough, it hasn't been. We've done some in South Africa, quite a few in Africa itself, up in Kenya, and a lot of the decision makers, in particular, we're doing 2 senior ones at the moment up in Africa. The decision makers sat in the UK and the decision came out of the UK from an approval perspective. And it's just really comes down to this is your option. If you don't want it, well, there is no other. You're not going to work with you. It's as simple as that. And that's this part where you step off the ledge, and internally, you're like a duck on top of the water. You look calm, and you're busy frantically paddling underneath the water. But it's the self-belief, and you said to the client, "This is what the challenges you've got. I can see this is going to be an issue. This is the best solution for you." And that's it. Don't go, so many I used to do this, and I didn't even know I was doing it, and my staff were doing it. But so many of us say, oh, our fees are 25%, and the client hasn't even said anything, and we've already thrown the but in. And we would go, we can offer you a retainer, But if you don't want that, it's contingency. It's 25% and it's a retainer, and this is it. And when they know that that is the option, or they need to go elsewhere, and you need to be comfortable walking away from it. In worst case scenario, they may come back to you in a week's time and say, look, they really can't approve the retainer. We then say, well, look, we can work on exclusivity if you can't give us a retainer, because I do understand certain global firms do have very, very strict processes around that. So where we haven't won retainers, we have got exclusivity.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting when you said, "Is it the norm?" Because it's something that we get asked as coaches, and I've shared this story before. American recruiters say, "Yeah, but it's easier in Europe; they get higher fees." Do you know Europeans say exactly the same about America? By the way, there's no truth to that whatsoever. What I say to anybody: to hell with the norm. If you want to be successful in any business, look at what the majority of people are doing, and do the opposite. 90% of recruitment businesses that started 5 years ago are no longer here. Most recruitment businesses copy what other recruiters do because they probably work for that firm as well. And there's this, well, this is the norm. This is what everybody else does. I promise you, you don't have to do the norm. 6 months ago, I was invited to go and speak in America at a big recruitment conference. I said, yeah, I could be interested. I said, can we talk about expenses and payment? He said, we're not paying you, but it just raises your profile. Why would I do it? He said, that's what the norm, that's what other coaches do. I'm not doing it. I'll happily do a webinar for you, but I'm not traveling all that way, paying that money and not getting paid for it. Oh, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. You've probably got too much business. You don't have to conform to the norms. If you can get your head around that, it's transformational. You do not have to conform to the norms. If a hiring manager says, well, that's not what we normally do, I'm not a normal recruiter. If you want the best, we can continue this conversation. I really want to emphasize that point because we get this all the time. Well, our industry is different and the norm is this. You can do whatever you do. Our mantra is your business, your rules. You should decide who you work with, when you work with them, and what the fee should be. That should be your decision, nobody else's. I really want to get that point. I just want to come around and get a few people's thoughts.
And I think just lastly for Kinjal there.
Yes, Jeff, yeah.
The one thing, and it infuriated me, is one of my best clients, and they are one of my biggest clients. It's a global business, and we do a lot of work for them in across SA, Africa, and in the bottom part of Europe. The fees were good, and we were making a lot of revenue from a contingency basis. Post the training, I then went to the chief people officer, and I said to her, what about retainers and this? Oh no, we use so and so for that. And I was like, are you why? Why have you've never given it to me? And she said, well, you've never asked us. And it infuriated me. And then I went and I spoke to somebody in procurement, unbeknown, and I said, just out of interest, they were charging double what we were charging. And I was working a lot harder than they were. And unfortunately now I'm struggling to get that retained work out of her because she doesn't see me in that light anymore. She now sees me as a contingency retainer. And we're starting to sneak in. We've just managed to sell our first one to this client, but it was because we never asked, and she then perceived us. And your clients are giving retainers out. I can tell you now, they're just not giving it to you. They weren't giving it to us. That is what I've become to realize.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Jason. Thanks for that. Thank you. I'm just going to come to a few people, just get your thoughts, feedback, and takeaways for what we've covered so far. Lauren. Good to see you, Lauren. We'll come to you first of all. We'd love to get your takeaways and feedback, and then come to you, Dom. Hi, Lauren.
I think my takeaway is really, it's that mindset piece. Again, and just being confident, I guess, in the service that you're offering. Like this week, I actually had a sales call, and I do typically say, oh, my fees are X. But for you... And this week I actually said, no, this is what the fees are. And then he was like, oh, is there any negotiation on that? And I was like, no. But I didn't actually give a reason, and I probably should give a reason next time, but I was just like, no. And then he was like, okay, sign the terms.
Yeah. By the way, Laura, just to clarify, you don't have to give a reason. It's your business. If they say, do you just, no, we don't.
Yeah.
And if they ask why, so we just don't. Yeah.
But they did
well
sign.
Done. Well done. Fantastic. Well done. Thanks for that, Lauren.
No, I think it's a really interesting discussion. Jason's journey again. The I think he kind of defined for all of us perception is reality. In the last statements he made, that framework definitely came to mind. People see you in a light, and it's hard to change that light, honestly. So why just pulling from his story, why you would go in necessarily and start at a contingency model, whether you work on that or not, is kind of beyond me. Because you can always sell backwards, you can always downsell, but damn, it's hard to upsell. And I think he more or less just clarified that. The other thing I just wanted to add was doing business with other people should be your decision. But I would also caveat that with make sure and ask the right questions to understand all parameters, and do your job and try to sell the person on what's in it for them on, say, a retain versus contingency model. Don't necessarily just let that go and say, oh, we don't do business that way. At least that's not the way I do it, if that makes sense. I think that you need to fight a little bit for that sometimes, and you need to use analogies that they can relate to, or hopefully they can relate to. And then when you've got all the data, then you can cut bait. I mean, you don't throw the fish, if you've got fishing rules, you don't throw the fish back in the water unless you know it's, less than 18 inches or whatever the fishery guidelines are, right? Long. You pull it up out of the water and measure it, and then you throw it back in the water. So my 2 cents.
No, I definitely agree with you, Don, there. And I do just from a limit of time, I do explain to them the value in the retain model. So what I have done, which has been extremely successful, is I've spent a lot of time, irrespective if I'm talking to HR, to finance, to legal, I've actually sat to them and explained to them what we do. As much as people think recruitment is CV, job spec, oh, that's easy, you found it on a job board on LinkedIn, how hard is it? They don't understand truly what we do, and they don't understand, well, if you want to work with contingency, I'm going to take that CV and give it to all your competitors, and whoever comes first is going to hire them, and whoever's paying me the most, I'm going to direct my candidate that way. And they didn't know that was happening behind the scenes with agencies. So I've started educating the clients, and that's what I have done, which is maybe something that would be beneficial for the likes of Lauren, you mentioned now, is when you pitch your retainer, say to the client, well, this is what it is, and I can guarantee you, ask the client that, when was the last time you took a reference on a firm you're onboarding? So I'm asking you for this retainer, but why haven't you taken a reference? Why haven't you asked me for a reference? Everybody you recruit through me, you're going to take references on, and that's part of what you want from me. But yet you're willing to write me a big check, but you don't want to take a reference on me. So I willingly offer up references, obviously industry relevance. If it's an FMCG company, I'll offer in FMCG space. And irrespective if those clients have done retainers or not, they'll speak to my credibility and they'll speak to the work I've done. And as soon as you're willing to offer up references and say, yeah, I'll give you the phone number and the mobile number, you can call them now, that instantly changes things around credibility. So it has been very strange, but every single time I've asked a client of late, and this has been the last 4 months, have you taken a reference on an agency you've onboarded? They've all said no, which is ludicrous. So it's just, again, something that does help to give you that additional confidence.
Yeah, really good point. If you go, any doubt, go into the member there under social proof, and we give you the questions to ask it to get powerful references or testimonials. We recommend that you get video testimonials as well, rather than written ones. And the reason that we do it, if you're not careful, you then got potential clients ringing your existing clients, and it can be a bit frustrating for your existing clients. Which, if you get a video testimonial, you can share it with them, and they can see it's genuine because it is a video testimonial. So you just get your client to do it on Zoom or whatever, and you can then send that to your potential client. That's a really good point, and it's a big factor in terms of influencing people. Social proof. So I'd strongly recommend that. Great point, Jason. Thank you. Bradley, come to you. I'd love to get your thoughts, feedback, and takeaways.
Yeah, very good interview. Obviously, taking a lot from that, Jason, especially with the consistency bit. Obviously, you mentioned the LinkedIn newsletters, obviously redoing the term, linked helper as well. The question I have is, what about the email marketing and the lead magnets? Is that something you're also doing and incorporated into the business?
So that was the bane of my life. When I say Bradley, like that was the one thing that was my Achilles. We weren't getting to it because everything sits in our ATS. And it's hard to drive it out of the ATS and accuracy. So we ended up signing up to and buying something called Send Grid, GRID, which is amazing. I mean, you get 2 months free. It sends 100 mails a day. You can import, drop it in there, and it gives you breakdowns of have they unsubscribed this, what's the open rate, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I was telling Terry before we jumped on the call, today I took 1,650 contacts, imported it into that, wrote the message, done, and that'll start sending instantly. And it's 100 a day, so in 16 days, the emails are done, and you can see what needs cleaning and what doesn't need cleaning. So I'm systematically working through the database, taking clients that are 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years old, and sending them off these emails. And it's that constant to try and pick that phone up and speak to the client, the old way of recruiting. Hey, Bradley, do you need a person? I've got somebody for you. It just doesn't work anymore. So the LinkedIn helper and using SendGrid takes care of that for you.
Brilliant. And just one last question as well. You mentioned earlier in the conversation that if someone doesn't go retained, you offer them exclusive. How does that model work, and what's the differences between the two?
No, nothing. So it's just purely based on exclusivity, and I'll say to them, look, if there's a reason, depending if it's a new client or if they really have. I mean, we've got a global FMCG that just really is very, very difficult to get the retained work across the line, but they're happy to give me exclusivity, and I'm happy with exclusivity with this client because we've placed with them very successfully by working on that. But that is the model. And if they don't want to do that and they want to give it to 5 agencies, I just tell them it's bad for their brand. You're getting candidates being called. It reeks of desperation, and you don't know who the other agency is. And if they have a bad pitch, the client doesn't get another run at that candidate. So we'll walk away from it. And we did have an instance very early on where a client, but this is our fees and this is how it works, and we give it to 5 agencies. And I was like, thanks, that's not what I do. And I'd love to work with you guys in the future, and I think it's a great brand, but it doesn't suit me. They then come back to us and they try to give us work, and again, and I declined the briefing, and I said, it's not what I do. And I then picked the phone up and I said, I really want to work with you, but this is not what I do. They've now come back and they've given us their global head of talent, looking after, I think it's like 45 countries, at massive salary, even in South African context, to be based in South Africa or in the UK on exclusivity. And we're not doing any other work with them, but we're doing that one position, which is perfect. I don't want the other work. So it's that cold turkey that I mentioned earlier, is pushing through I don't have massive amounts of jobs and I don't have all this activity. I've got my focus back, and I feel invigorated around having less work than I've had before.
That's very inspiring. I've been working in recruitment for over 20 years. I've never once asked for retained, but hearing this, I feel inspired now. So yeah, great.
I can guarantee you, I phoned Terry or messaged him when I was up in Johannesburg, and I got those 3 retainers over 3 days. And I said to him, he didn't teach me anything different. I mean, and no disrespect, he didn't. There were no tricks and techniques, and he didn't say read this and try this. He just said ask, and that was it. And ask with conviction and don't back down. And I asked, and I ask a lot, and I get a lot of times they say no to me, and I'm happy to walk away because I'm sitting with 4 retainers on my desk now. I don't need any more work. I'm running at capacity. So I don't need. Before, I would take on 10 contingency jobs if I had to. So the more you ask, and you just keep walking away and you walk away, and when you look at your closure rate on the contingent, it's just not as good as you think it was. I mean, I was pretty shocked when Terry asked me to do that exercise.
Sorry, one last question, Sarah. I know we're pushed for time.
No, it's okay.
When you do go from retained to contingency, is that done verbally, or do you kind of get that confirmed in like a proposal or in writing, or is it kind of done on a kind of verbal agreement?
When we go from
exclusive
contingency to retain or retainer to contingency?
From retained to exclusive for exclusivity. Yeah.
Oh no, literally just drop. We'll do it in the meeting and agree to it there and then I'll just drop an email post that saying, as agreed, we will be working on this on an exclusivity basis. Any candidates that are referred to you from any other source need to come through us, so it's in writing. And in addition to that, I then ask them for diary availability for all the interviews with first interview, second interview, third interview. So if the last interviews with the CEO, we booked that out in advance. So the process, we still control the process, but you can't just say, I want exclusivity, but they're not getting anything. So we'll book all the interviews and we just put candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3. So they're getting the same value. And because you do that, they don't want to veer away from that exclusivity.
And sorry, Terry, last question.
No, it's okay, Bradley, go on.
And what about in terms of how you present the CV? Do you think that now you're getting more retained assignments, that your CV presentation is needed to improve, or do you still present the CVs in the same manner, in the same fashion?
We've always worked on a standard template, which I'm happy if it's shared, and there's nothing special about it. It just reads easy. So the template has never changed. The only difference is when we do the retained presentation, we just glam it up. We put it in PowerPoint. We do a lot of the client branding alongside our own branding. So it almost looks as something that you would find at a conference type of you get a conference look and feel. So, the client feels it's special, and the template's now created, so it actually doesn't take us that long. Brilliant.
Well, like Kanjal said, I'd love to touch base with you. Obviously, outside this meeting, Jason, and thank you for today. It's been very inspiring, and I think it's given me a lot of inspiration to kind of finally kick on and answer my first retained assignment. So hopefully before the end of the year. Well, not hopefully, Terry, I know you're going to correct me there. I will, before. I saw you leaning forward there, Terry, so I thought I'd get in there now. I will have one, right? So,
fantastic.
So, thank you, Jason.
Done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And what I'll add to that, anybody that's a recruiter, this is a fact of life. You're going to get rejected. If you can't handle rejection, you're in the wrong occupation. And Jason made a really good point. A lot of people are going to say no.
Yeah.
And a lot of time people don't ask for the retainer for fear of getting the rejection. Well, you're always going to get rejection anyway. You're as well to ask, and you could argue while the most of them say no. If you're asking 10 people and 2 say yes, you'd take that all day long, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So look, what I'm also going to post in here, Jason, there's a video to watch. It's called the 9 Key Questions to Ask. It's in the members area. So it's the questions to ask the hiring manager, and then there's a template email. So if you get it on exclusive or retained or whatever, so you can have a look at that. It's in the members area, and then anybody else, feel free. Paul, but we're going to run by about a couple of minutes. But there's a couple more questions for Jason. But I'd just love to get Paul's thoughts. Paul, look, Canadian Paul. Sorry, love to get your thoughts, feedback, and observations, and takeaways, Paul.
I've always worked contingent, mostly always. But earlier this year, when Trump had announced tariffs against Canada, it really threw a lot of uncertainty into the market. And that was really bad because companies don't like to hire when there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. And I had just picked up 3 engineer searches from one company in Ontario in the manufacturing sector. And these were all $20,000 placements, but they were contingent. And I was worried because I knew the manufacturing sector was really taking a hit. And I told him, I says, I need a deposit. I need a retainer, or I just can't work this right now because the people are just not hiring. And then they wouldn't give me a retainer. And so I moved on and I just had it in my head for the first time, really, and it was out of necessity that I just can't waste my time. There wasn't enough business on the deck. People weren't hiring, and we were really struggling. And so I just started asking for deposits, and I got 3 of them in 1 week. Just shortly after I started asking everybody, I walked away from a good number of business too. Interestingly enough, that company that was going to give me the 3 engineers, maybe it was 2 months or 3 months later, I circled back, and they still hadn't filled those roles. They hadn't hired, and they weren't planning on it. And I'm so glad. And what an eye opener that was for me. And now I'm getting deposits maybe on a third of the orders that I ask for it on. And when I'm not getting that, I am getting a measure of exclusivity at least. So it's when you ask, you get. You don't ask, you don't get.
No,
that's all I guess I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Paul. And just another point as well. The classic model of the retainer is a third. You get a third of the fee up front, but it doesn't have to be, because for you as the recruiter, it isn't about the money; it's about the commitment. And we've worked with clients. We used to work with a lady in the area called Cambridge, not far from here. She used to get £1,000. She asked for a deposit rather than retainer. What you're asking for is some skin in the game. Because they paid you £1,000, they're less likely to go and give that to 2 or 3 other recruiters as well. That's all you do. You're trying to block your competitors from getting the job order as well. Bradley, I'm going to come to you for your last question, Bradley.
Sorry. Just a quick question on that whole pitching for retainers, because it's something that I'm definitely going to do. I feel confident in doing it, and like I say, a lot of my business is one cold calling on the phone anyway. It's just about the point of contact. Is most of the retained work one directly with the kind of CEO or C-suite, or is a lot of it coming from the actual HR, and is one a little bit more easier to get than the other, or does it not matter? Just pitch it anyway and see how we get on.
You going to take that, Paul? Or Jason, rather?
No, so good question, and it's a difficult one because you need to sort of read the room. Inevitably, the person that's going to pay the retainer is the person that's feeling the pain. If the CEO is working late because he's lacking a resource, they'll sign it off. If it's the HR person, they're not particularly that interested in signing it off because the line manager's feeling the pain. So we've had different instances where the C-suite signed it off. We've had some relatively junior HR managers who went to the line manager and said, this is it, you need to pay this and this is why. So it does tend to vary. The more senior you go, often they tend to go, well, what's the HR policy? And they'll flick it back to HR, etc. But again, to Terry's point, we don't call it a retainer either. We call it a mobilization fee. So we've changed it completely. So it just sits better, we've noticed, and we've rebranded it saying we charge 20% of our fee up front, and we call it a mobilization fee. And to Terry's point, it really is a commitment thing. The number we just chose 20%, but once we've got it locked in, you will make the placement. So just ask them. Mobilization, it's a kickoff, it's a commencement, this is what I'm going to do for you, and it's quite nice because it plays to how we're going to start the process.
Excellent. Thanks, Jason.
I'll message you, Jason, and we're definitely connected.
We'll set some time up.
Appreciate it.
A couple more questions. Looking back, what's the biggest personal or business transformation that you experienced since joining Apex, Jason, if you haven't already covered it?
Well, there's been a lot. There isn't sort of only one. I mean, we have transformed our entire business in how we do it. And it's not an actual thing, but it's seeing the wood from the trees. I really feel that the clarity that I thought I had, I didn't have. So that, and it isn't a transformation thing, but I feel invigorated. I really love recruitment. I mean, I'm passionate about it again. And I really had thought I'd lost it. And I also thought that recruitment was dying off. So for me, it isn't one thing specific. It has been the consistency of doing many things, and the self-belief of just pick the phone up. What's the worst they're going to do? Say no. And even though I know they're going to say no, we still don't pick that phone up for fear of rejection. And you pick that phone up, and the self-belief I would also add in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, I think we've covered this before. The data showing now that contingency recruitment revenue is declining, retained recruitment is increasing. So if you ever wanted another reason why you should be looking at retaining, that surely should be it. Jason, we talked to a lot of potential clients, who are sitting on the fence. And you'll have had some doubt, if everybody would, which is quite understandable. What would you say to somebody that's thinking, yeah, this could be for me, but I'm not sure? What would you say to that person sitting on the fence to say whether Apex is going to be right for them?
Oh, look, hands down. And from experience, we ran a good shop, we ran a good operation. We were growing year on year. We 15, 16 people in the business. It really, I had thought it was a good operation. Looking at what Apex has done, it has completely changed the way we do things. I mean, vastly. So it's not for me, I would say to anybody, don't come in here thinking, I'm going to get theory. You're not doing a master's degree where you're going to go away and have to go and write tests and exams and pick up all this theory. You haven't necessarily taught me how to recruit. You've just made me believe I can recruit, and I'd lost that. And through watching the different videos and the different things in school, etc., there's little things that we've sort of picked up. And, I even questioned you many times. I said, well, where's the theory? Where am I going to learn stuff? And you're like, well, watch these videos. And but I want something to learn. That's what I'm looking for, to read something. So anybody who's wanting to do it, honestly, the results speak for themselves, and go back and look at client testimonials that we've got now, and look at where the business is at, and look at the activity and where from a social media perspective, that isn't the look at the jobs we're posting and the positions we're recruiting for will speak for itself. So yeah, hands down, they definitely should be doing it. Again, it's hard. It's a lot of commitment, but I've got more time now, but I've got more time to do the right things. So if people are looking at getting some time back in their life, creating a bit more of a balance, this definitely is the program for you.
Excellent. Jason, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much indeed. There were so many gems in there. I think I'm going to just kind of touch on a few of them. You acknowledge that probably what's getting in the way, and by the way, Jason, for most recruitment business owners and their limited beliefs about what was achieving. You talked about not getting retainers because you didn't think the market was giving you retainers, but in fact, when you thought about it and acted upon it, it's the fact that you weren't asking for retainers. That applies to so many people. You got that working on retained business means that you actually work less and generate more income. So rather than working on 10 jobs to fill 3, why not just win 3 retainers and just work on those? You're happy to walk away from business, which I think is critical. So you've got this abundance mindset. You're not there to serve everyone, and you can never serve everyone. And you're able to communicate the benefit to the hiring manager working with you on the retained or exclusive basis, which I think is absolutely fantastic. In my opinion, if you can nail that and communicate the benefit, and you made some really good points there about if there's multiple recruiters working on the same job order, or one of those recruiters give a bad pitch about that job order, the impact it has on the organisation. They're the kind of points you should be making to hiring managers when they're, oh yeah, we give this to 10 other recruiters because it increases our chances of getting the best candidate. But by the way, there's no evidence to support that either. There's so many good points in there, Jason. Truly motivational. I hope everybody else felt the same way, because there was some really fantastic points in there, some great learnings. A massive thank you to you, Jason, for agreeing to be grilled like this, and take all these questions. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys got a lot from it. Until next time, folks, take care, take action, be relentless.